Hi, I'm Colleen Carroll Campbell, host of Faith and Culture. Today I'm at the Cardinal Regali Center in St. Louis to talk with fashion model and chastity spokesperson Leah Darrow about the virtue of modesty. Please stay tuned. Welcome to Faith and Culture. I'm your host, Colleen Carroll Campbell, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Leah Darrow. Leah is a former fashion model who appeared on the hit reality TV series America's Next Top Model. She's also a Catholic chastity speaker. Welcome, Leah.
Thanks, Colleen.
Leah, you appeared on this pretty highly rated reality TV series. It was some years ago now, and you've since launched this apostolate as a Catholic, a speaker in Catholic settings, specifically on the issues of chastity and modesty. But let's start with your modeling career.
Sure.
How did you get into modeling?
Kind of fell into it. I've always loved fashion. I'm one of those girly girls.
Yeah.
But after college, I started pursuing it a little bit more, and I had this crazy idea one day to audition for America's Next Top Model, and then before I knew it, I was on the TV show.
Wow, so that was really kind of your big break, your first big break.
I guess so, yeah. I did some things locally. I had worked in modeling just a little bit as a younger child, just a few things. And then doing a few things in St. Louis was just a little bit of experience, but yeah, America's Next Top Model definitely kind of put me on the map.
Okay, so what was your experience, both on the show and then immediately following?
Well, reality TV is not reality.
Tell us about that, because it's yeah. It seems like a heightened reality, or maybe, as you said, not quite reality.
It's not. In fact, I think the editors of most reality TV shows edit the reality out of it and present us with the fantasy that this is really what reality is supposed to look like, and then we're trying to chase after that and all this drama. It's not what it appears to be. A lot of us girls, I know on the show of America's Next Top Model at least, we're very worried. There's a lot of anxiety. We're always being told that the photo shoot's going to happen any second, and then hours and hours and hours go by, and there's not a lot of sleep, and there's not a lot of time to eat, and some of those basic human functions that you need to maintain sanity kind of goes out the window,
right.
And that's why you have those great ratings, and it can be very scary.
The idea being to get the contestants to sort of be really on edge and ready to create lots of drama.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of drama with that. I think there's a lot of drama already in real life. I don't think we need to add to it with anything, with anything else. But after I was eliminated on America's Next Top Model, I stayed in New York and started to pursue modeling there, and that's kind of when I, was going deeper into the modeling career, and then saw a lot of the pressures that I think our culture gives us for women.
And what was your experience modeling in New York? I mean, it sounds very glamorous, exciting. Was it like that?
Well, I think that's the key word. It sounds like it.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of hard work, and it's not at all what we think it is. I was always pretending to be something for somebody else. I never really loved who I was. I never really thought that I was beautiful or that I was supposed to be somebody else always.
Right.
And there's a lot of masks that you always put on to make people happy and to tell people what they want to hear and do something. But when you go home and you take off your makeup and your high heels, it's actually a lot more sad than that.
And what is the lifestyle like, or what were you living there in New York? I mean, were you living your Catholic faith? Were you raised Catholic?
Yeah, I was born and raised Catholic. I was born and raised on a small farm in Norman, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And my family has since moved to the St. Louis area, but we had a great devotion to Our Lady. We said the rosary every night together. It was beautiful. My parents were great with that. But there was a time in high school and definitely in college where things got fuzzy for me. I didn't understand some things. I didn't bother to ask questions. I didn't know where to go to get that information.
Right.
And so I had defined my terms differently than the way God did. I defined happiness as just looking out just for me and being successful and having money and looking beautiful and knowing that I would get attention by that. So I pursued those things even in my modeling career. And so my Catholic faith, although I still been going to church on Sunday, I was not living it out. My actions were not Catholic.
Right, right. And what was your turning point then? What made you pick up this faith again?
Well, I was in a photo shoot for a pretty big magazine, and it was my first photo shoot where they had presented me with clothing options that were immodest. And I had most of the modeling I had done actually wasn't very, it was actually pretty modest in general. So
Right.
I was taken aback a little bit by the photo shoot, although I did know that they wanted to portray a little bit more of a sexy look.
Right.
And I thought I was okay with that until they showed me the clothes. And I just told myself, you have to be a professional, you have to do it. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up picking out an outfit, and in the middle of that photo shoot, that's when God just touched my heart, and I just knew at that moment, in the middle of the photo shoot, everything changed. I realized that who I was not who I really wanted to be, and that what I was doing in that picture, taking those pictures, was not helping society. It wasn't helping me. I was letting down my little sister at home. And that we were all very connected, and I was not helping society at all. I was hurting it.
Yeah. And so you had this kind of conviction just in the middle of a photo shoot.
In the middle of a photo shoot that happened, and there's a lot of more details going into it, but the bottom line is I actually got up and left. I walked out.
And what was the reaction you got?
Oh, it wasn't pleasant. We'll just say that. It wasn't what they wanted,
right.
But I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't live the lie anymore. I couldn't pretend to be happy when I wasn't. I couldn't pretend to love myself when I really didn't, because I didn't know who I was. Mm-hmm. And so I walked out, and I went home, and I ended up calling my dad.
And what did he say? What did you?
I called him, and I was very emotional. I just told him that if he didn't come and get me, that I thought I was going to lose my soul.
Yeah.
And there was a silence on the phone, and he just said, "Okay, baby, I'm coming to get you."
Wow.
And he drove all the way from St. Louis to Manhattan to pick me up.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this began a new chapter in your life,
It did.
and now, fast forward a few years, you've launched this Catholic speaking apostolate. You're going around the country. I know you've done some work with Pure Fashion, which promotes modest fashions for young women, but you've also spoken on the topic of chastity with various organizations, Catholic Answers, chastity.com. What have you drawn from in your own experience to reach young women in particular? Because I think the life that you were living in New York, as empty as you describe it, is for many young girls a dream come true, and that's really what they're aspiring to. Unfortunately, I think that's true even for many young Catholic girls, even church-going ones, because there's so much pressure in our culture to live up to this ideal, and in many ways you were embodying that at the time. So how do you draw on your own story as you're reaching these young women and girls?
Well, I think that dream that they want, that's what so many young women do. Even not mostly, but a lot of Catholic women, like you said, like a lot of Catholic young ladies still want that, and they think that that's going to make them happy. And what I can at least offer is the fact that, I've been there and I've done that. I mean, I really was a part of that entire scene, and it doesn't bring us happiness. And in fact, it lowers the bar for us women. And when we do that, we're not helping society. And it's big, but it's even bigger than that, because it's about us. It's about who we are as a woman, and that we are a big deal. We are amazing, and God has created us for a very special reason in this world. And it's not to bring down society. And we can affect culture by how we dress and how we act, how we think, and portraying the beauty of the world through our souls.
And let's start with how we dress, because I think this is a tough issue for girls and young women. As much emphasis as there is in our culture on one's appearance and how you dress, we also hear a lot, well, God doesn't care what I wear. What's important is chastity, sort of thinking the right thoughts, doing the right things. Doesn't matter what I'm actually dressed in, because if I'm not doing something wrong, what does it matter what I look like? And another one, you often hear, I think, from teenage girls especially, is, hey, if a guy is having impure thoughts looking at me, that's his problem. And why do I have to dress differently because he's so weak? I mean, how do you respond to these kinds of things? Because I'm sure these are things you hear when you're out speaking on, especially on the topic of modesty and fashion.
I think just right off the bat, you know what, I agree. God doesn't probably care what we wear. He cares about our bodies, though, and how we veil our bodies and how we dress our bodies. That's something he is paying attention to. So he might not care what the label says or what the size says, absolutely. But he cares about our bodies because he created us, and he thinks we're wonderfully made. And if he cares so much about our bodies, then we have to have a connection, and we have to be honest with ourselves that we must veil our bodies in a way that shows our dignity. Fashion should make a statement because the clothing should make a statement, not because our bodies should be what makes the statement and what we're revealing with that. And I think a lot of young girls, because I know fashion is very sensitive, it's a very personal thing, it's a style, We have to be honest with this. Fashion communicates to the world something about us. It tells us a little bit of who we are, what we believe, what we do, and if we dress in a way that shows our dignity, we're probably going to get reactions and from people that will be in a dignified manner, probably. But when I dress in a way that is immodest and provocative and say, well, I don't care what they think and it's their problem, then we're just disconnecting ourselves from everybody else. And I think a lot of young girls who have a vocation, let's just say to marriage, for instance, I can guarantee you're going to date your husband one day. But all the men that you date before you date your husband are somebody else's husband or your parish priest. So that would be an awkward confession if that was the case. And so how we act in a modest way, because modesty is not just about a hemline, and how we dress says something about who we are, and it should protect the people and the heart of not just ourselves, but people we interact with.
So when looking for modest clothing, I mean, I know one of the protests you hear is, well, there isn't anything out there, or what's out there is frumpy. I mean, how do you address some of those questions? Okay,
well, you know, being Catholic isn't easy. It's tough. It's tough. It's harder than some of the things I was doing in my life before, but it's worth it. You know, each day I get up and I have to do certain things to help my faith, you know, be alive and to live it out loud. Well, modesty is the same way. So I know it's a tough thing, but you know what? There's some point where I'm like, you know what? Okay, let's just stop. Let's just not get a hold of ourselves. There are clothing options out there. Yeah, you're right. Most of the stores are not going to be very sensitive to modest fashions, but you can put things together, and you can wear a lot of, you know, tank tops under things, or make sure take out the hemline of your skirt just a tad, because it might be easier to work with. But there's things you have to do, but you have to work at it, of course, because it's worth doing.
And what does it mean then to dress with dignity? And you know, how do you explain that, especially to young girls? Because I know so many mothers struggle with their teenage girls on this question. And I know, you know, there are various things you can say, you know, the neckline here, the hemline there. But at the end of the day, it's a bit of an attitude, isn't it? The way you approach veiling your body, as you said.
Yeah, you know, we should first off know who we are. We are children of God. We're daughters of God, and that is amazing, and it is beautiful, and He loves us so much. And if I'm going to dress in a way that turns ahead, it's going to be in a way that turns ahead of, oh my gosh, she's so unique, and she's so different, she's so mysterious, because she has more clothes on, when everybody else doesn't. And that's the way we can be unique in that, and that shows our dignity. And you will see people and how they're dressed, and when they have less clothes on versus more, and how they carry themselves, how they hold themselves, and who they believe that they know that they are.
So it affects you, the way you're dressed. Did you find that in your own experience from your earlier New York days to later?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, for a fashion model, clothing is a big deal. You know, it defines us in some ways. And so when I changed my clothing, I realized when I put on clothing, it told the world, who had been used to Leah Darrow living a certain life that was quite impure, that wait, something's different. Wait a minute, why is she dressed like that? And she still looks great, but it was my statement to the world of, I will not be that girl anymore. I'm not going to live an impure life. I'm going to live a pure life. I believe in Jesus Christ, and He is going to be the one who directs me through this. And my fashion is going to say that.
We have to run to a break right now, but when we come back, we'll talk more about the new modesty movement. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to Faith and Culture. I'm your host, Colleen Carroll Campbell, and I'm in St. Louis today talking with former fashion model and current chastity spokesperson Leah Darrow about the new modesty movement. Leah, before the break, you gave us a good overview of your experience in New York City and some of the arguments for dressing modestly, which we know is important. One term that you've used in some of your talks is the lie of perfectionism, which I think you, as I understand it, is something that's told to girls and young women, especially all around the country. What is that lie, and what's the truth behind it?
That lie is told to us through many different ways, and the messages of the culture bring it to us completely. We have it in the magazine ads, on TV, in the movies, where if you buy this lip gloss, you're going to look just like this girl, or this clothing is going to make you the most perfect. And the fact is that sometimes, a lot of times, those girls you see in the magazines, they're computer generated, and they're not even real. They don't even exist. And if they do exist, if it is a real woman, she's been edited completely. I mean, so much so that she doesn't even look like the person that she really is. That it's a lie. And so they're telling us women through a lot of those media messages that this is what you should be looking like, but what they're presenting is a complete lie of perfectionism. And that's something that we have to pay attention to.
And why do you think this resonates with women especially? Because, you know, you see some vanity among men, certainly, but it seems to be, I mean, and perhaps down through history, women who are the ones who are always, you know, the most concerned about how, you know, what am I wearing? How does my face look? How does my weight fluctuating? I mean, it's just, there's so much pressure. I mean, I think in some ways it's kind of always been there, but why do you think this is really getting its hooks, especially into young women today?
Well, I think that women are beautiful. And I think, you know, I mean, when you look at a woman's legs compared to a man's legs, I mean, it's, you know, the men are great, but you can see a little bit of a difference. God made women gorgeous and beautiful, and not just of our figures or our hair color, but because he just made that woman's body, it gives life. It's so receiving, and it is a beautiful, beautiful body. So I think that women are drawn to something within beauty in itself. But what the problem I think we get into is that we look at beauty only in this external way, and we allow the messages of our culture to influence us only in that type of beauty, and we neglect the most amazing part of who we are and the beauty of our souls and the women's body and the dignity that brings.
And what's another way then of looking at beauty as a woman? I mean, looking at trying to be a beautiful woman. What's another way to think about that?
If you don't think of the Blessed Mother, then we have a big issue.
Right.
I mean, I just have such love for her, and I think that you want to look at the most beautiful woman. Look at her. I mean, look how beautiful that she was. She gave everything for us. She brought us her son, and that beauty of how she kept herself veiled in such beautiful modesty, because she knew how important her body was. She knew that she was carrying the Savior of the world, and that had to be veiled in a certain way. Our bodies are just like hers in some ways. We are just as beautiful, and we have to really, really take the time to understand how beautiful it is that God created us. And when you believe in that, when you're convicted that you are valuable and loved by the one God, why would you not take care of such a treasure?
There's kind of a dying to self, though, isn't there, in making the shift? And I'm sure you experienced this, because so much of the message that we hear from our culture, our pop culture especially, is that a woman has to get a lot of attention, and sexual attention. And you see this with young girls. I mean, I'm constantly appalled. Younger and younger, and you know, we find pole dancing kits for preschoolers and padded bras and all sorts of things that you know, a little schoolgirl has no business having. I mean, frankly, most of it that adults don't have much business with either. We're seeing all of these kinds of things, and it's really the sexual exploitation, especially aimed at young girls. And they get a message from very early on that to be valuable is to be sexually attractive. And your value is measured in how attractive men find you. And this is a message that's really eating away at the innocence, I think, of our little girls, who don't even get to be just innocent little pigtail girls anymore. They have to already be sexual objects auditioning for attention at a young age. So you have all of that going into it. And then someone perhaps is at home listening to your message and saying, yeah, that resonates with me. But how do I give up this desire for attention that I've been groomed from a young age, that I have to have attention, and especially sexual attention? How do you address that when a young girl or young woman comes to you with that question?
And unfortunately, that happens a lot. Those questions that I get when I travel all over, I get so many young girls, I mean 12 years old.
Really?
And on, who have had their first sexual encounter, who have talked about, they come to me bawling, crying, because they don't know what to do. They think that there's no hope for them. How do I get over this? And they see that they're wanting all this attention, they're doing these certain things, but they're heartbroken. That's clearly not getting the attention they want. And I think that if there's somebody out there who's listening about, and who is, this makes sense to them, that they have gone down that route. And I know, I'm the first on that list. I used to do that. Let me just pose this analogy, or pose this question. think about all the attention that we are doing and making our bodies an object, because we know we get attention from that. We're not dumb, we're smart women. And that if we give ourselves away in an impure way, even if it's a piece by piece or the whole thing, what type of attention are we getting? Are we happy? Do we feel loved? And then take those feelings and then think about what if? What if you gave all of your time, attention, and your desire to be loved by Jesus? What if you gave him more attention, your faith more attention, your desire to go to the one man who won't leave you, the one man who will love you forever, the one man who thinks that you are so beautiful and totally perfect because he created you. If we try to shift that attention or the idea that maybe there's something there, then there could be a difference in how they're wanting it. He's going to teach us how to love. He's going to teach us all of that. And the world is clearly not giving us this happiness. And there's comes a times when you just have to say enough's enough.
And what was your experience when you sort of made that shift? I mean, was it as difficult as you thought it would be? Were there moments when you thought, oh, I gave up too much for this? Or, you know, what was your experience? Was there a struggle at all, or was it pretty easy?
I had lived about a decade in the world, devoid of a real spiritual life. I lived for about 10 years thinking that it was all about me, and I used the theology of Leah Darrow to get me by. And when it came down for me to make a change, I was exhausted. I was so tired of living that lie. I didn't care anymore. Although I still love fashion, and I thought, wait a minute, do I have to dress in only neutral colors and, you know, clothing up to like my chin and all the way on the floor? Like, what does this mean? And then it was just this beautiful thing that God gave me. I mean, he gave me this way to like know that, no, I created you and I want you to be beautiful and to look beautiful, but knowing your value. And so for me, it was just, I was so excited to change and to have a new life because I couldn't live that life anymore. But yeah, there were some challenges in trying to find out the right clothing to wear. But once I put on, you know, I threw out the little stringy tops and the short skirts and things like that, and I put on clothing that I enjoyed, that I liked, and I had great style to it. I felt better in it. And that was a huge thing. I couldn't believe that I could put on something that actually had more material to it, and I felt better. And then when I looked at myself in the mirror, I could actually look at myself in the mirror. And I was happy. I was just very happy.
Now, what about other forms of modesty? Because we've talked, obviously, on this show, and especially given your background, about modesty in fashion. But I know there's an older term we've heard sometimes, modesty of the eyes. You know, kind of watching what you're looking at, what you're taking in. Do you see that affecting, did that affect you, or do you see that affecting young women today, especially in terms of, and young men as well, who also need to cultivate this virtue?
I think that when I think about modesty of the eyes with women, unfortunately, it's women looking at other women. We're always looking at somebody else to compare ourselves to. And that is our biggest mistake. If we do that, we will never live up to anybody because everybody else is somebody else and they're not us. So that just doesn't make sense. It's not logical to be doing this. And so that's a modesty of the eyes I think that women should kind of pay attention to. Modesty of the eyes for men is definitely, first thing, pornography. You know, when men are looking at a woman who is this beautiful woman, even if she is computer generated or not, and they are losing attention after 30 seconds and then flipping the page, how are those men preparing themselves even for a monogamous marriage?
Right.
One woman forever? That doesn't happen. And it also objectifies women, meaning that they're looking at us only as an object for their pleasure, so we're something to be used. And I know men's hearts are amazing and big and protective and strong, and I know that's not what they want to do, but pornography and in those things, they enable that.
Right. Where is a place to start? We're running out of time, but for both young women and young men, where is the place to begin if for instance, a man is trapped in a cycle of looking at pornography, or a young woman trapped in the cycle of sort of being the object that others are looking at in that way? Where does he or she begin?
Oh, hands down, go to confession. Go to the sacrament of reconciliation and make yourself new with God. Have a recommitment to wherever you're at in life, wherever your journey has taken you, whether it's taken you totally off the beaten path or if you're pretty much on. Go to the sacrament of reconciliation and ask God to give you the grace to have that pure heart and the courage to live that life.
Well, that's a great place to start. Thank you, Leah, for joining me.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Faith and Culture. We're out of time, but we'll see you next time.